There was a man who was buried alive, not in a coffin, not underground, but inside his own mind, and what he did to get out will completely change how you think about your worst days. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you isn't just a story, it's a blueprint, a survival guide, built from real people, real moments, and real suffering that somehow got turned into something extraordinary. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is where we dig into the stories that most people are too scared to tell. Stories about falling apart, about hitting the wall, about the nights you stare at the ceiling and wonder if you're strong enough to make it to tomorrow. If that sounds like your kind of thing, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell so you never miss a video. I promise you're going to want to be here for what's coming. Now, let's go. Picture the tallest mountain you've ever seen. Maybe it was in a movie. Maybe you've driven past one and felt that specific kind of smallness, that humbling, chest-tightening feeling when you realize just how big the world is and just how small you are inside it. Now imagine someone told you that you had to climb it. No training, no preparation, no gear. Just you, your two legs, and whatever's left in the tank. That's not a metaphor. That's Tuesday for most of us. That's what hard days feel like. You didn't sign up for it. You didn't prepare for it. And now you're standing at the base looking up and wondering, why is this happening to me? But here's the thing. The mountain doesn't care about your question. It never did. And the people who make it to the top, the ones who survive their hardest days and come back stronger, they're not the ones who figured out how to remove the mountain. They're the ones who figured out something far more important. And I'll tell you what that is. But first, let me tell you about a man named David. David Goggins is a name you might know. If you don't, buckle up. Because this man's story is one of the most viscerally uncomfortable, inspiring, and downright unbelievable tales of human resilience that has ever been documented in modern times. And I'm not just saying that to hype him up. I'm saying it because when you hear what this man came from, what he lived through as a child, what he walked into as an adult, what he did with a broken body and a shattered sense of self, you will never look at your own hard days the same way again. Not because your pain is less valid, but because you'll realize, for the very first time, what a human being is actually capable of when everything is stripped away. David grew up in a home where fear was the wallpaper. His father was an abusive, controlling man who used physical violence and psychological terror as tools of dominance. As a young boy, David watched things no child should ever see. He absorbed trauma the way dry ground absorbs rain, quickly, deeply, and with nowhere for it to go. He developed a stutter. He pulled out his own hair from stress. He wet the bed well into his teenage years because of the anxiety that lived in his body like a permanent resident. By the time he was a teenager, his family had escaped, but the damage was done. Deep, invisible, and festering. He wasn't academically strong. He wasn't confident. He didn't walk into rooms and command attention. He was the kid in the back. The quiet one. The one people looked past. And for a while, that's exactly who he let himself be. He worked as an exterminator, killing cockroaches in the middle of the night, driving home in the dark, looking at himself in the rearview mirror and knowing, deep down, in that place you can't lie to yourself, that this wasn't it. This wasn't the life. This wasn't who he was supposed to be. But knowing that and doing something about it are two completely different mountains. Then one night, he saw a documentary about Navy SEALs, and something cracked open inside him. Not in a warm, inspirational way, in a painful, terrifying way. Like a bone that's been set wrong and has to be broken before it can heal properly. He decided right then, watching that screen in the dark, that he was going to become a Navy SEAL. Now here's where the story gets interesting. Because David Goggins at that point in his life was around 300 pounds. He needed to lose over 100 pounds in under 3 months just to qualify for the application process. His doctors told him it was physically impossible. His family thought he'd lost it. And a part of him, that quiet, scared, stuttering kid from the past, whispered that maybe they were all right. And here's the cliffhanger. He didn't ignore that voice. He didn't pretend it wasn't there. He did something far more unusual, far more terrifying. He looked that voice directly in the face, and then he ran anyway, while it was still talking. And that distinction, that tiny, brutal distinction, is what separates people who survive their hardest days from the people who get swallowed by them. He ran in the morning. He ran at night. He swam in freezing pools. He starved. He pushed. He lost the weight, not gracefully, not smoothly, but messily, painfully, in ways that made his body scream in protest every single day. He made it to SEAL training, and then he failed. BUDS training, basic underwater demolition, is considered by military experts to be one of the most physically and psychologically brutal selection programs on the planet. The failure rate isn't just high. It's designed to be high. It's designed to find the exact moment when a human being wants to quit, and then make it a little bit harder. David failed in week 1. He developed hypothermia. His body shut down. He was sent home. And now, here's where I need you to really pay attention. Because this is the part of the story that matters more than any feat of physical strength. He went back. He asked to come back, and they let him, only under the condition that he start from the beginning. From day 1. From scratch. No credit for what he'd already done. No acknowledgement of the suffering he'd already survived. Just the mountain, again, fresh. At the base, looking up. And that, right there, is the moment that most people never talk about when they tell stories of great achievement. It's not the top. It's the going back to the bottom, voluntarily, consciously, with full awareness of what it's going to cost, that defines a person's character more than any summit ever could. He went back through BUDS. He fractured his kneecaps. He developed stress fractures in his legs, so severe that doctors told him, if he kept running on them, he could suffer permanent disability. He hid the fractures. He wrapped his legs in duct tape, literally duct tape, and he kept running. He kept swimming. He kept pushing through Hell Week, a continuous 130-hour stretch of physical and psychological torture, with barely any sleep, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Because he had to go back. Because life kept presenting the mountain, and he kept choosing to climb. Now let me stop here, because I want to address something. You might be sitting there thinking, okay, cool. This is a story about some superhuman guy who has freak genetics or a rare psychological condition or some kind of pain tolerance the rest of us don't have. And I hear you. It's a comfortable thought. Because if that's true, if resilience is a birthright and not a practice, then you're off the hook. Then your hard days are as hard as they feel, and there's nothing to be done about it. But here's the uncomfortable truth that David Goggins himself talks about openly, repeatedly, and with a kind of rawness that very few public figures ever bring to the table. He was not born tough. He was not born resilient. He was not born with extraordinary pain tolerance. He built it, brick by brick, in the dark, while bleeding, while scared, while that little voice from childhood was still whispering that he was nothing. He built something he calls the 40% rule. And when I first heard this concept, it stopped me cold. Here's what it means. When your mind tells you that you're done, that you've hit your limit, that you've given everything you have, and there's nothing left, you are actually at approximately 40% of your true capacity. 40%. That means the wall you feel, that absolute ceiling of your endurance, that moment when you want to put down the weight and walk away from the hard thing. That moment is not your limit. It's your mind's first line of defense. It's the part of your brain that is evolutionarily designed to conserve energy, to protect you from perceived danger, to keep you safe. Safe and soft, safe and small. Think about what that means for your hardest days. Think about the last time you felt completely overwhelmed. When the emails wouldn't stop, and the bills were piling up, and the relationship was fraying and your body felt like it had been filled with wet concrete. Think about that moment when you sat down and thought, I can't do this anymore. I have nothing left. If Goggins is right, and the data, the science, the psychology behind mental endurance strongly supports this idea, then in that moment you were at 40%. There was 60% more in you, sitting there, untouched, waiting. But here's the next question, and it's the one most motivational content never bothers to ask. How do you actually access it? How do you reach past that wall when everything in your nervous system is screaming at you to stop? That's where the story gets deeper. That's where we go from biography to blueprint. I want to tell you about a second person now, someone whose story feels completely different on the surface, but lands in exactly the same place. Her name is Bethany Hamilton, and if you don't know who she is, I want you to really hear this. On the morning of October 31st, 2003, she was 13 years old, floating in the warm water off the coast of Kauai. Hawaii, waiting for the next wave, surfboard beneath her, arm dangling in the water. A 14-foot tiger shark came from below. In one strike, without warning, without a sound, it took her left arm, completely, just below the shoulder. In seconds, the water turned red. She was losing blood at a catastrophic rate. She was 13 years old, and she was dying in the ocean she loved. She survived, miraculously, through the quick action of her friend's father, who applied a tourniquet using his surfboard leash. She made it to shore. She made it through surgery. She woke up in a hospital room and she was told, gently, carefully, with all the kindness that medical professionals reserve for the moments when they have to hand someone the new reality of their life, that she would never have her arm back. She was 13, and in that moment, that singular, irreversible moment, the version of her life she had imagined simply ceased to exist. Now here is the part that I want you to sit with for a second, because this is where it gets philosophically interesting in a way that nobody in the mainstream wellness space ever goes deep enough to really explore. Bethany didn't bounce back immediately. She didn't wake up the next morning with a smile and a new outlook and a motivational speech ready. She grieved. She cried. She had moments of rage and despair, and the kind of existential confusion that comes from having your world rearranged in an instant by something completely outside your control. She was not a robot. She was not a superhero. She was a 13-year-old girl who had just lost something permanent, and she felt every single ounce of that loss. And that matters. Because here's what we get wrong about resilience in modern culture. We treat resilience like it's the absence of pain. Like the strong person is the one who feels nothing, doesn't waver, doesn't break down, just squares their jaw and moves forward like some kind of emotional tank. And that version of resilience, that performative, stoic feelings are weakness version, is not just inaccurate, it is actively harmful. Because what it teaches people is that if you feel the pain of your hard day, you're doing it wrong. That your grief is weakness. That your fear is failure. And so people spend enormous amounts of energy trying not to feel the thing they're feeling, which uses up the exact fuel they need to actually move through it. What Bethany Hamilton modeled, whether she intended to or not, was something entirely different. She felt it. She sat inside the grief. She let the loss be real and heavy and devastating. And then, at her own pace, in her own time, she made a different kind of decision. Not the decision to stop feeling. Not the decision to pretend the arm was somehow fine. That the loss didn't matter, that she was okay when she wasn't. She made the decision to find out who she was on the other side of the thing that broke her. She got back on a surfboard, 26 days after the attack. 26 days. She didn't know if she could do it. She didn't know if she could paddle with one arm. She didn't know if the ocean would feel like home again, or like a place of violence and terror. She got in anyway. She paddled out anyway. And when she caught her first wave, she didn't stand up gracefully. She struggled. She wiped out, and she paddled back out and tried again. And that scene, that image of a 13-year-old girl with one arm paddling back out to face the thing that nearly killed her, is one of the most powerful visual representations of human resilience I have ever encountered. She went on to become a professional surfer. She competed at the highest levels of the sport. She learned to surf better with one arm than most people will ever surf with two. And not because she forgot what happened. Not because she moved on and left the trauma behind. But because she decided consciously, repeatedly, on the hard days and the harder days, that the thing that happened to her would not be the final word on who she was. And now I want to connect these two stories, because there's a thread here. A specific, repeatable thread that shows up in almost every account of extraordinary human resilience, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's not talent, it's not genetics, it's not some rare psychological trait that only a handful of people on Earth possess. It's a pattern, a practice, a way of relating to difficulty that can be learned, built, and strengthened, the same way a muscle can be built in the gym. And understanding this pattern might be the single most important thing you do with the next 20 minutes of your life. Here it is. Every single person who has survived their hardest days, and not just survived, but come out the other side with something they didn't have before, every single one of them did the same thing at their lowest moment. They made contact with it. They stopped running. They stopped numbing. They stopped pretending. They turned to face the thing that was crushing them, the grief, the fear, the failure, the loss, the shame, and they made contact with it. They felt it fully. Not wallowed in it. Not surrendered to it, but acknowledged it, looked directly at it and said, "You're real, you're here, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise." That moment, that act of radical, unflinching honesty with your own suffering, is the actual turning point. Not the triumphant run. Not the first wave. Not the graduation from SEAL training. The moment you decide to stop lying to yourself about how hard it is, that's the real mountain. That's the one that matters. Because on the other side of that honest reckoning, something changes in the nervous system. The energy that was being used to suppress and avoid, all that white knuckling, that performative okayness, that exhausting effort of pretending, suddenly becomes available for something else. For movement. For growth. For the next step, let me give you a third story, because I want this to land with weight. This one is less famous, less cinematic, but it might be the one that hits closest to home for most of you. Because it's about ordinary hard days. The kind most of us actually live. Not shark attacks or military training, just life. Quietly, relentlessly trying to break you. Her name was Anna, and no, you probably haven't heard of her. She's not famous. She didn't write a book or do a TED Talk or get featured in a magazine. She was a woman in her mid-30s who, within the span of 18 months, lost her job due to a company collapse, went through a painful divorce, watched her father deteriorate from early onset dementia, and found herself, for the first time in her adult life, living in a one-bedroom apartment alone, with almost nothing. No career narrative, no partner, no clear picture of who she was outside of the roles she'd built her identity around. Just herself, and the silence, and the specific kind of darkness that lives in that silence. I heard her story through a friend of a friend. Not from a stage or a screen, but over coffee, secondhand. The way the most human stories usually travel. And what struck me, what I couldn't stop thinking about for days afterward, was what she said about the moment things began to change. She didn't say it was therapy, though she did go to therapy. She didn't say it was a workout routine, or a morning routine, or a new job, or a new relationship. She said it was a morning when she woke up, and instead of immediately reaching for her phone to fill the silence, she just lay there. She stayed with it. The emptiness, the uncertainty, the fear. She didn't try to fix it or fill it or explain it away. She just let herself be a person lying in bed who didn't know what came next. And she said something in that surrender. Something in that willingness to be exactly where she was without fighting it, finally started to release. She described it as putting down a weight she didn't know she'd been carrying. Not the weight of her problems, those were still there, but the weight of resistance. The weight of refusing to accept that this was real, that this was her life, that this was the chapter she was in. When she stopped fighting the chapter, when she stopped trying to skip to the resolution, she found that she could actually be present enough to start writing the next sentence. Not the whole book, not the happy ending, just the next sentence, and then the one after that. Over the next 2 years, Anna rebuilt. Not to the life she had before, that life was gone, but to something that fit her better. Something she actually chose instead of fell into. She started a small business doing something she'd always wanted to do, but never had time for when she was busy being who everyone else expected her to be. She didn't get everything back. She didn't need to. Because what she built on the other side of the hard days was more hers than anything she'd had before. Her story doesn't have the cinematic sweep of David Goggins. It doesn't have the dramatic shock of Bethany Hamilton. But it has something that both of those stories also have underneath the extraordinary surface details. It has that same pattern, that same act of making contact, that same willingness to be in the hard thing, fully honestly, without performance, and to trust, even when you cannot see it, that something is happening, that the roots are going deeper, that the season of hard is doing something that the season of easy never could. Because here's what hard days actually are. And I mean this in the most literal, physiological, psychological sense. Hard days are the mechanism of growth. They are not a detour. They are not evidence of your failure or your bad luck or some cosmic punishment for things you did wrong. They are the process. They are what growth looks, feels, and costs. You cannot build a muscle without creating damage, literal microtears in the fiber, and then giving the body time and fuel to rebuild those fibers thicker and stronger than before. The damage is not incidental to the growth. The damage is the growth. The hard thing is the thing. There is no version of becoming stronger that doesn't go through being tested. No version of becoming wiser that doesn't go through being wrong. No version of becoming whole that doesn't go through being broken. The mountain doesn't give you the view from the top without making you earn the climb. And here's the part that nobody tells you when you're at the base, looking up. With no idea how you're going to make it, the climb itself is what changes you. Not the summit. The summit is just the proof that you climbed. The person who makes it to the top of a mountain is not the same person who stood at the base wondering if they could do it. Something was built in the gap between those two moments. Something was burned off. Something essential was forged in the difficulty. and you can only collect that thing by going through it. There is no shortcut, no backdoor, no life hack that replicates what the climb does to your character. And the moment you understand that, really understand it in your bones, the mountain stops looking like an obstacle. It starts looking like an invitation. But I know what you might be thinking right now, because I've thought it too. On the really bad days, the ones where the ground feels like it's shifting under you, and you can't find solid footing anywhere, it's very easy to hear something like this and feel a flash of inspiration, and then wake up tomorrow and feel the same crushing weight. And I want to address that honestly, because this isn't about a motivational speech that evaporates by morning. This is about a practice, a set of specific, concrete, repeatable things you can do on your hardest days, not to make them easier, but to make them useful. The first is this: name what's happening, out loud or in writing, with complete, unflinching honesty. Not, I'm going through a rough patch. Not, things are stressful right now. Specifically, what is the thing? What is the actual fear underneath the anxiety? What is the actual loss underneath the sadness? What is the actual shame underneath the anger? Name it, with precision, because vague suffering is harder to sit with than specific suffering. Your nervous system relaxes when your conscious mind catches up. When you can name the thing exactly, you break the spell of its generalness, and something in your brain shifts from threat response to problem-solving mode. It's a tiny thing. It costs you nothing but honesty, and it changes everything. The second thing is this: narrow your horizon. On the hardest days, the mind catastrophizes. It projects the current pain forward into every future moment, building an imagined future that feels as real and as heavy as the present. And the weight of that projected suffering, the suffering you haven't even lived yet, the suffering that in many cases will never come, is often far heavier than the actual thing you're carrying today. So you narrow the horizon. You don't think about the year. You don't think about the month. You think about today, just today. What do I need to do to get through today? Not fix everything. Not rebuild the whole life. Not figure out the whole plan. Today, one foot, then the other foot. Repeat. The third thing, and this one is the hardest and the most important, is to stay in motion. Even tiny motion. Even motion that feels futile or small or ridiculous in the context of the size of the problem. Because motion, physical, literal motion, does something to the human brain that stillness cannot do. It creates a neurological narrative of agency, of forward movement, of doing something, and that narrative, even when it's small, begins to counteract the narrative of helplessness that feeds depression and despair. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to meditate for an hour or journal 20 pages or restructure your entire life. You have to take the next step, whatever that step is. Clean one dish. Send one email. Walk to the end of the street and back. Drink a glass of water. Move. Because the body and the mind are not separate systems, they are one system. And when the body moves, the mind follows. Not always dramatically, not always immediately, but it follows. And now I want to tell you something that I think is the deepest layer of all of this. The thing beneath all the practical advice, beneath all the stories, beneath all the hard-earned wisdom of the people who've climbed the mountain and come back down to tell others what they found up there. Because we've talked about feeling the pain. We've talked about narrowing the horizon and staying in motion and naming the fear and trusting the process. But all of those things, every single one, depends on one foundational belief, and it's a belief that the hard days actively try to destroy. It's the belief that you are worth the effort you, specifically, as a person, as a human being with a specific set of experiences and wounds and dreams and ways of seeing the world that belong to nobody else on this earth. The belief that the work of rebuilding you, of showing up for yourself on the days when everything is broken and nothing makes sense, and the gap between who you are and who you want to be feels impossibly wide. The belief that that work is worth doing, that you are worth fighting for, that the person who emerges on the other side of the hard days is not just a recovered version of who you were before, but a more complete, more capable, more compassionate version of a human being that the world actually needs. That belief, that single, fragile, constantly under attack belief, is the mountain. Everything else is just the path up. David Goggins believed it. Not naturally, he had to build that belief against decades of evidence that told him otherwise. He had to argue with himself, fight himself, run himself into the ground, and then pick himself back up and do it again until the belief was stronger than the doubt. Bethany Hamilton believed it. She believed that who she was bigger than what had happened to her. Bigger than the loss. Bigger than the ocean's capacity to define her. And Anna, unnamed, unfamous, rebuilding her life in a one-bedroom apartment with nowhere to be and no one watching, she believed it too. On a Tuesday morning when she put down her phone and chose to simply be in the hardest moment of her life without fighting it, she believed she was worth the stillness. And I want you to hear this clearly and directly, because this is the part of the script where I stop being a narrator and I speak to you as someone who has also sat at the base of a mountain that felt unclimbable. There will be a moment, maybe it's already happened, maybe it's coming, when everything falls apart at the same time. When the story you've been telling yourself about your life stops making sense. When the person or the career or the health or the identity that has been holding your world together suddenly isn't there anymore. And in that moment, the voice in your head will tell you that you don't have what it takes, that you're too far behind, that it's too late, that you're not the kind of person who makes it through things like this. That voice is not your wisdom. That voice is your fear. And fear, for all its volume, for all its conviction, for all the way it can fill a room and make everything else go quiet, fear is not a reliable narrator. It tells you the worst version of every possible story. It casts you as the weakest character in every room. And if you let it write the script of your life, that script will always end the same way. With you not trying. With you staying at the base. With you watching other people climb and telling yourself the story of why you couldn't. But you can take the pen back. You can write a different scene. Not a perfect one. Not a painless one. Just a real one. Where you pick up the thing you've been putting down. Where you say the thing you've been afraid to say. Where you take one step in the direction of the person you know. In that quiet, honest place beneath all the noise that you're capable of becoming. Because the mountain is not your enemy. The mountain is the story. And you are not the person at the base. You are the story of the climb. I want to leave you with one final image. Picture a tree, not a sapling, but a fully mature, ancient tree, the kind with roots that go deeper than you can imagine and branches that have survived 100 storms. Now imagine that you could somehow see what that tree went through to become what it is. The droughts that forced its roots to go deeper searching for water. The storms that stripped its weaker branches and forced it to grow stronger ones. The seasons of cold and dark that made it go dormant, made it look from the outside like it was dying, while underneath, invisible, something was building. Something was consolidating. Something was getting ready for the spring that was always coming. Even when the tree could not see it from inside the winter, that tree did not become ancient and strong and beautiful in spite of the hard seasons. It became what it is because of them. Every drought, Every storm, every winter that looked from the outside like an ending, those were not interruptions to the tree's growth. They were the growth. You are the tree. Your hardest days are the seasons you cannot skip. And the roots you're growing right now, in the dark, in the cold, in the place where nobody can see you and nothing feels like it's working, those roots are the most important thing you will ever build. Because when the next storm comes, and it will come, you won't just survive it, you'll stand in it, rooted, deep, unmovable. Not because the storm isn't real, but because you are more real than the storm. That's the mountain lesson. That's always been the mountain lesson. Not that the climb is easy. Not that the hard days are secretly good, but that you, on the other side of the thing that's trying to break you, are worth every single step. Now, I have a question for you. And I want you to actually think about this before you answer. Not just type the first thing that comes to mind. Think about the hardest moment you've ever survived. The one where you genuinely didn't know if you were going to make it through. And I want you to tell me what was the one thing, the one thought or one action or one person that got you to the other side. Drop it in the comments below. Not because I'm asking for engagement metrics, but because your answer might be the exact thing that someone else watching this video right now needs to read. Your story might be the thing that keeps someone else on the mountain when they're about to turn back. So tell me, what got you through? And if this video hit you somewhere real, if something in these stories landed in a way that you needed today, send it to someone. You know exactly who. That friend who's been quiet lately. That person who mentioned they were struggling. That family member who's been carrying something heavy. Send it without a message. Just send it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone in a hard season is say, "Hey, I saw this and I thought of you. I thought of you because I know you're climbing, and I wanted you to know that someone sees it." If you're new here and you made it this far, that tells me everything I need to know about you. You're someone who takes growth seriously, who shows up for the hard conversations and the harder truths. Subscribe, hit the bell, because this channel is going to keep going deeper into the stories, the science, the philosophy, and the raw human truth of what it actually means to become who you're capable of being. You don't want to miss what's coming next. The mountain is waiting, and so are you. Now go climb.